Hello, everybody. Welcome again to the Smorgasboard podcast review, where we're going to be talking about the newest episode of Wandavision. I believe it's episode 4. I do not know the title. Never mind, I do. It's called "We Interrupt This Program," which is a fitting title for the episode. So we're just going to get into it, and I'm going to rattle off what happened, and then we're going to talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and you know, just have a good time because that's what we're here for. We only live once. Live it. So, oh, fire me. Okay. So, this episode starts off in a very interesting position, being that it picks up almost immediately, well, probably actually during uh in game, because the first thing we see is a hospital room where people are randomly getting undusted. Everybody's suddenly popping, which is cool because we didn't actually get to see that in the movie. So it's like suddenly everybody's like coming back to life after the second snap that brings everybody back. So everybody's like rematerializing, and it's like the reverse of the dusting. Like all the dust is collecting back, and all the people are popping back up. So people are running around like crazy, trying to like figure out what's going on. And one of the people that gets brought back is our old friend Geraldine from the last episode. And we find out that actually her name is Monica Rambeau, which is the child of Maria Rambeau from Miss Marvel or Captain Marvel. So we brought that up last week, and turns out fan theories were right. They get it right every once in a while. So here we go, Maria Rambeau or Monica Rambeau running around trying to figure out what's going on, and coming to grips with the fact that it's been like 5 years. Was it 5 years?
I
The
believe
difference
so.
in the snap. So it's like 5 years later. She's coming to grips with the fact that her mom is no longer with her, and everything around the world has completely changed. So we then move on to her kind of getting her life back together, and it turns out that she is an agent of Sword, which is the mysterious corporation or government arm that's kind of been popping in and out of the series thus far. So we start getting a little bit of backstory on Sword, and that Monica's mom was actually the one that created it, and we start finding out that they were doing they were trying to go to space and do missions in space and all kinds of stuff like that. But Monica, unfortunately, has been grounded because, as all moms do, they put in preventative measures to keep their kids in line. So even though she's not around anymore, she's still looking out for her kid. So her first mission back in the game is to actually go check out a disappearance, and the disappearance happens to be in the town of Westview, which is where the whole show has been set up to this point, where she runs into one of my personal favorite characters, Mr. FBI agent Jimmy Woo from the Ant-Man movie. So pretty cool to see him back again. And they're kind of chatting up about how, like, oh, well, it's just one missing person. And turns out, no, it's not one missing person. It's a completely missing town. Like, nobody in this town that clearly exists, and they can clearly look and see it. Everyone's saying that, no, this town doesn't exist. Like, there's no such town called Westview. So suddenly, the plot starts to thicken about what's happening in the show up to this point, what's going on with this town and everything. And then we start seeing the things that kind of start falling into place from the past 3 episodes. They send a drone in that looks like a toy helicopter. They Geraldine or Monica walks up to like the edge of the town and gets sucked in. So it shows how she came about. And then after her kind of immediate disappearance, that's when we start seeing the encampment from the last episode start to kind of build around a Sword and the FBI and like the CIA, and everybody are pulling resources as quickly as they can to try and figure out what's going on. And the episode is really heavy with like filling in the blanks. Like the guy in the beekeeper suit in the second episode, turns out that he's actually in a hazmat suit, and he was a Sword agent who was trying to cross in underground and try and like bypass the force field that seemed to be around the town. So it explains that guy. It explains the radio trying to get a hold of Wanda, Turns out that voice actually was Agent Wu trying to like communicate with her, and it's just all of the pieces from the show start like falling together as this government entity is trying to figure out just what's going on inside this town. And as they start investigating all of the people that they're seeing from these broadcasts that they picked up on, they're putting names to faces and figuring out that like all of the people that are inside of Westview, who are inside of this like show that Wanda is kind of putting on, are real people. So it's not just figments for imagination. These are like real people that are somehow being affected by whatever's going on in the town. So the big kicker is this episode kind of ends right where the last one did, with us seeing Monica getting booted out of Westview, and we get a very clear answer to the question of who's actually like controlling everything that's going on in Westview, and very clearly it is Wanda who is kind of pulling the strings. So it kind of jumps back into uh, Geraldine's facade somewhat kind of slipping, and her bringing up Ultron and Pietro, and then suddenly Wanda just kind of goes haywire. Like she just blasts Monica right out of the town with her magic. She realizes she's destroyed part of the house, so she rebuilds it before Vision can come back in. And then when she turns to talk to Vision, she sees like him in his like dead state from the end of Infinity War, after he had the Infinity Stone ripped out of his head. So clearly Wanda's in control of this town, but she's, for whatever reason, she's just trying to build this like perfect world around herself. So the episode kind of ends right where the last one did, but it filled in a lot of the gaps that we've kind of been speculating about over the past 3 episodes. So overall, I really enjoyed this episode because it, although the sitcom stuff is fun, it took a much needed step back and kind of brought the cinematic universe like back into light. And it really needed to answer a lot, because each episode to me was building up more and more questions. And then finally, this one was like, all right, here's like 90% of like what's been going on outside of the town, so that you can get a better feel for just what is actually happening. So I'm gonna stop talking for a minute, and I'm gonna get your guys' opinions.
No, I 100% agree because I think we talked a little bit off camera there, Parker, but this episode felt like, so Marvel could have taken the show in 2 different directions. I felt like they could have kept going where they were, and we just moved to the 80s or whatever, get another sitcom, and then this style episode where it's back in reality would happen much later in the series. But I felt like they placed this here to get the more casual viewer hooked back in. It's like, okay, we got some of the sitcom. All right, let's bring you up to speed. This is what's going on to keep you hooked, and it was much needed, and I appreciate it, and I really liked it as well. I thought it was fantastic, very good episode, and the highest level of praise I can give just about any episode is when you finish the episode, you want more. And that's
Right.
exactly what I felt after this episode. I wanted more. I didn't want it to stop there. I wanted to go right into the next episode. So, Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. Like I said, after the first 2 episodes, of course I couldn't be here last week for the review of the third, but after the second, after we did the review of the first 2 episodes, I said that there was enough intrigue for me to be like, yeah, this is a good show. I kind of want to see more, but I'm not going to be anticipating it every week. But like you said, after this episode, now I actually want to see more, because you see the outer workings, and it's, even though one of our friends really didn't like this episode because it went back to Marvel being Marvel, um, I really enjoyed it going back to being Marvel being Marvel. And I don't see anything. I really like this episode. I didn't see anything wrong with it. Um, well, not as much wrong with it, but yeah, I don't think it's going to really interrupt the sitcom anyways. I think next week we're going to go right back to like being in the 80s, and then like the 90s and stuff like that as it continues to go, and then they continue to do stuff on the outside. It's just showing another perspective, and I like that.
Yeah, and you definitely need it because you can't just you can't expect this whole show to be nothing but sitcom gags, you know, because if it was nothing but just like them jumping from sitcom genre or era to era to era, like if it kept following that trend, eventually like the buck's got to stop somewhere, and you have to explain it in like the grand scope of the cinematic universe, because that's kind of the double-edged sword of an extended universe like this, or an interconnected universe, that if you go off the rails, you have to be able to explain it in like comparison to everything else that's going on around it, because you can't have a world where it's nothing but like sitcom parodies or homages, and have that sitting in the same universe with like movies like Captain America. There has to be an explanation for it, and there is, which is good. But if you just kept, if this was nothing but a limited series of, oh, we took two characters and we're going to do funny haha jokes for like 9 episodes, and it's not going to really like mean anything in the grand scheme of things, then it's like, then why do it? There's no point in watching, because I feel like you would get 2 episodes in and you'd be like, oh, this is fun, but if it's not contributing to the greater story as a whole, then what's the point? And this is the first new phase content that we have post Spider-Man Far From Home. So it really needed to kind of get the ball rolling in the right direction for the rest of the Marvel content that's coming out. Otherwise, why have it?
Right.
Because I kind of feel that way about. I think that's why this was the first thing that came out, because it's kind of filling in immediately after Endgame. And if they would have pumped out some other content, like I know they were going to release the Black Widow movie before this, but everything happened. But it would have felt weird if they would have dropped any of the other scheduled content they had, because it would have just been like, well, yeah, the what if seemed cool, or whatever, but if it's not contributing to the whole story, like the greater cinematic universe that everybody's been waiting to see, then I feel like viewership of it would have suffered. Like, I think it's going to do great when it actually comes out, but I feel like if it was the first thing that came out, people were probably just going to be like, well, I want more of the cinematic universe, not like cartoons. People will love the cartoons, but they couldn't drop them first.
Yeah, I just from a um, an outside perspective, I told my parents that they needed to watch WandaVision, and seeing the previews, they really weren't going to watch it because they were like, it just looks kind of it wasn't the Marvel cinematic stuff that that they wanted to.
Yeah.
And then after this was after watching the first 2 episodes, I told them they should give it a try, and they told me that. And then after watching this latest episode, I was like, you really want to go watch WandaVision? And they're like, oh, yeah, we'll give it another try. So from just people who just watch the cinematic movies and are really into Marvel being Marvel, this latest episode will be good for that. And yeah, I mean, we knew it would have to. We knew it wouldn't be a sitcom all the way through, because it has. We pretty much know that it's going to like spin off into Doctor Strange in the Madness movie. So we knew it would have to be getting back to Marvel being Marvel and explaining things at some point or another. So I mean, it is what it is. It's got to link up somehow, and it can't just be a show of spin-off sitcom comedy and plates breaking over Vision's head the whole time.
Right.
Although I would definitely enjoy that for at least the first 3 or 4 episodes of just nonstop,
we'll get a gag
like,
reel
slap, like nonstop, like slapstick kind of stuff. Plates breaking, people tripping over tables. I could do that for at least 3 or 4 episodes before it got like too boring. So I want to talk about some of the big stuff that was kind of revealed in this episode a little bit more in depth. So I think the first thing, of course, being uh, the true identity of Geraldine being Monica Rambeau. So I brought up last week that it doesn't contribute anything to the story for me that she is who she is, because I believe Julia was the one who talked about
Yeah.
the fan theory that everybody thought like, oh, she's actually uh, the daughter of Captain Marvel's friend from her movie, and I was just kind of like, yeah, that's fine. It's kind of something to be expected in the Marvel Cinematic Universe because they have to do callbacks because how can you not, And I think it's fine that they're using her as a character and her story's progressing, but it really doesn't add anything for me so much, like I don't know. It just wasn't like one of those like, oh, that's the person from the thing. Like I was just like, okay, that's fine. I don't know. What were your guys' opinion? Because it seems like
Yeah.
she's probably going to play a pretty significant role, maybe even in Marvel moving forward, seeing that she's a member of Sword, and Sword seems to be positioning itself to be a pretty big part of this next phase.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what her role is going to be moving forward in this series or in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but she pretty much, like you said, they do callbacks all the time, and it's pretty much like I don't know if you guys, I think it's in Far From Home. It's whenever Peter is like, he gets called to the principal's office,
Mm.
and his principal is actually the son or grandson of someone who served with Captain America.
Oh, really?
And yeah, because like while he's in like the office talking to his principal, there's a picture up on his desk of his grandfather from World War II or World War I, whichever one it was that Cap served in.
Yeah.
And that's why like his principal like uses all those Captain America videos for
Yeah.
teaching about like drugs and stuff like that to all of his students. So
Yeah.
she kind of has like a role like that. And that's fine, that's how Marvel does things. They give you like a little callback. You're like, hey, he's related to that guy. That's kind of cool. But then it really doesn't add much more than that.
No.
It seems like they have bigger things in store for her, maybe, with this than something like that. But we're yet to see that.
I wouldn't be surprised if, obviously this is laying groundwork for the future, like you guys are saying, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see Monica play a little bit more prominent role in the Miss Marvel movie coming out a couple of years from now. Having that Captain Marvel relation with her mom, I could easily see them using her having a relationship with, I think it's Kamala Khan as Ms. Marvel. I could easily see her working her into that whole kind of thing.
Yeah, there's definitely a place for her in that movie and in like the sequel to Captain Marvel because she played a major role in that movie, so I don't see why she wouldn't play a continued role in the next one. So it's nice to kind of see the continuations of things like this. But I guess the only reason I really bring it up is because like I saw a TikTok where some guy was, like over the moon that he thought he had figured something out, and he did. Credit to him, but it's just like I don't know. It's neat, but let's move on to something that really I enjoyed much more, which was Jimmy Woo and his bag of magic.
Yes.
Yeah, so when she goes to investigate this like disappearing person, and Jimmy Woo, FBI agent, is there waiting for her, he pulls his card, like his like business card. I don't know. Do FBI agents have business cards? Like that's what
Jimmy
it
Woo
was.
does.
Like, that's right. So he does like a nice little sleight of hand thing, and that is one callback that I can get behind because his entire like character arc in Ant-Man and the Wasp was like him trying to learn how to do sleight of hand magic because he saw Scott do it. He did like the vomiting cards thing and like sleight of hand magic, and he's just like, that's your superpower, isn't it? You're magic. And he's just like, no. So it was funny because all through that movie, like every time there's like a little callback to him trying to learn magic. He's like really bad at it. Like he's trying to like yeah, he's like always practicing and he's like dropping cards and like, is this your card? Like, no, it is. And he's like, oh man, I thought I did it right. Like that's just like his whole character in that movie. So to see that he's finally, in like the 5 or 6 years since Ant-Man and the Wasp, he's mastered sleight of hand magic. I think that's
the
so
character
funny.
arc and development of Jimmy Woo will be the biggest thing to come out of WandaVision.
that is the highlight for me. Just that one little moment of, because he's such a genuine character, and it's like for me, Jimmy Woo is the most relatable character in all of like Marvel, because he would like that's how every one of us would be if we were in a world with superheroes, like just in this constant state of amazement and just like goofy as all heck. Because like you have all these characters who are like larger than life and like they think like they're too cool for school, and like Jimmy Woo is just like your like average Joe who's just like, I can do sleight of hand magic and I think that's pretty neat. And it's like, you know what, Jimmy, it is pretty neat and you're a pretty neat guy and God bless you. I hope he plays a major role in the rest of Marvel until the end of time, because I love him.
You know who else we saw in this episode who had a return? Darcy Lewis.
Oh yeah,
We haven't talked about her yet.
Speaking of
I didn't
larger, yeah, speaking of larger than life characters and too cool for school, we got the sassy Darcy Lewis from the Thor movies, former protege of Natalie Portman's Jane Foster. So I don't know, how did you guys feel about Darcy popping back up in this?
I like it, especially her and Jimmy Woo play well
Yeah.
with each other. Like there's the scene where she's like eating chips and shit, but they're watching like the WandaVision show. It's whenever they have kids.
Yeah.
And she's like, want one? He's like, I don't know, maybe. Having a little Jimmy Woo running around in the future, and he like looks over and he goes, "Oh, Chip, yeah."
He's
Yeah,
talking about like, yeah. He's like little Jimmy Woo walking around with his toy FBI badge, and it's just like Jimmy, you're such a treasure, man. Well, this world is better for having you in it, Jimmy Woo. Yeah, that was. They did play. They're kind of like the Sour Patch Kids of like a dynamic duo. She's like the sassy, like bitter one, and he's like the real sweet and happy one. So like she's real snappy with her comebacks and real sassy, like constantly asking for coffee that she's never gonna get. And then Jimmy's just like, yeah, I'm just happy to be here. I'm just this is all neat stuff that's going on around me. So definitely some good character. A lot of, I mean, that's what 3 previously established Marvel characters from the cinematic universe that they've brought back into WandaVision aside from our 2 main characters. So it's really cool to see. I will say this: it's cool to see kind of like where everybody's at now and kind of how. It's weird to say like the world taking shape because it's like a franchise. It's like 10 plus years old now. But it's still neat to see like, Jimmy Woo still popping up and Darcy still popping up, and I don't know. I think they were the highlight of this episode for me.
Yeah, I really liked seeing Darcy, but as the episode went on, I kind of was thinking like, okay, they got her because she's a major astrophysicist. Why didn't you get Jane Foster?
Because Natalie Portman is too expensive.
I mean, that crossed my mind too, but we've got Elizabeth Olsen and what's his name that plays Vision. So it's like they obviously can throw the money at those people. But what I was thinking is, I'm guessing that Thor: Love and Thunder is going to be taking place about the same time, and Jane's going to be off-world or something.
I was going to say she's off training to be Thor.
Yeah, exactly. So
stuff.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably a definite possibility, and I think, I don't know, I think for the sake of the show, I think Darcy plays better.
For sure, yeah.
If they, because with the way the show feels and like the theme of it, like that little bit of like sassy comedicness is like needed, and I feel like Jane would just be too serious, so I think Darcy is a good balance to you know, like all these government guys running around, you know, like real serious and real tough, and Darcy's just kind of like, I need an old like TV with
Not
vacuum
flat.
tubes. Yeah, I need a bunch of like period piece kind of like technology to transmit these broadcast waves. I will say this: the it was funny that they're like watching everything unfold like an actual TV show, and but like it kind of it felt weird to me because it's just like they're sitting there. I don't know what I was expecting once we started getting into like the outside world, but it just kind of felt weird that it's like they're watching a TV show inside of a TV show. Like it got really meta for me, and I was like, I'm watching two people watch TV. Like this is what parents feel when they're like, why are you watching Let's Plays and commentary videos? Like I get it now. I guess that means I'm old, but it's fine.
Like, it felt weird, but it also kind of it felt like it drew you into the Marvel universe as well, because you're like, hey, I experienced watching this as a TV show, and now these characters that I've watched for, you know, this universe is watching the same thing I watched, so it kind of like drew me into the universe as a viewer
Yeah.
to be like, hey, I experienced this too, and now they're experiencing it, even if it's in a funnier way, and I don't have to use a vacuum tube
Yeah.
TV.
Yeah.
I'm also surprised at how many vacuum tube TVs they could draw up in
Yeah,
such a short amount of time. But
well, hey man, that's the government for you. You know, they can get it done when they feel like it. So,
Yeah.
you know, if your astrophysicist needs like 30 like CRT TVs, then like they're gonna get them. You know. Oh gosh, that yeah. So another big thing that I want to talk about is kind of like the big revelation of the end of this episode, that Wanda is in fact kind of pulling the strings of this town, and we just kind of got to see just how volatile she really is, because throughout the whole episode, as like Darcy and Jimmy were like watching the TVs, you know, every time we would see, you know, Wanda like rewind time or something would happen that she didn't like, and she would just like pop it back, we were getting to see it from like the actual perspective, you know, through Jimmy and through Darcy, because they didn't even get to see, like, they didn't see the parts where Vision is saying like something's off, something's weird. They didn't see the part where the sword agent came up through the sewer, and you know there was all these parts where Wanda like rewound time, but they didn't see that. They were just seeing like something's happening in there, and something, it's just like there's a blip, you know, almost like, you know, somebody's trying to like censor the broadcast, and they're not getting the full picture. So it was really cool to see that. And then, you know, we got the ultimate kind of revelation to like just what exactly happened to Monica before getting chucked out of Westview, which was Wanda basically saying, "You're an outsider. You don't belong here. You're here to hurt me and my family." And she just force pushed her through like two buildings. She flew halfway across the town and then got jettisoned outside of that force field. And like, like that should have killed like a lesser person. Like she went through that house, like two walls in the house, like a brick chimney or something. She just got flung. And then Wanda, like realizing what she did, just really quickly like rebuilt everything, like nothing happened. And then Vision comes in and he's really concerned, and she's just kind of like, almost like creepily, just like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like everything's fine. Let's watch TV. And it's like, ooh, it's like what's going on in like Wanda's world right now that's causing her to be so, you know, bizarre.
it'll be interesting moving forward to see not only how Sword and its agents and everybody else tackles getting through to Wanda, but also if Wanda like ups her like quote unquote security measures for like the town, because people have just really just been able to walk right in all along, and I don't think it's like something Wanda. She put up this whole thing kidnapping all of this town and like, you know, all of its people to play these actors in her TV show,
Yep.
and which they've become aware of it at some point, and but it'll be interesting to see if she kind of like makes that barrier impenetrable or harder to pass through if she can, because now she's seen somebody's gotten in and tried to like, well, 2 times now somebody's gotten in and tried to like influence the way how she wants her reality to be. So it'll be interesting to see how she ramps up stuff and how they ramp up stuff as well,
Yeah.
and if they can like break through to her.
Yeah, because it's really interesting. The the two big questions that I kind of have coming out of this episode, because this episode answered a lot of questions in terms of like what's going on the outside and how the outside world's affected the inside world and vice versa. But the two big questions for me is, one, why is Wanda doing what she's doing now that we know she's the one who's doing it, and the second one being just what exactly has she done to the people of the town, because we get kind of I would say somewhat of an idea from like the two police officers that are outside of the town in the beginning of the episode, when Jimmy's like talking to him about Westview, and they say like Westview doesn't exist, and they're from Eastview or whatever. So Jimmy immediately says like it seems almost like somebody's like wiped their memories. So it's interesting to think, well, if Wanda like wiped the memories of everyone in the town and is like putting new memories in their head to build this, utopia for herself, then how is it that they're somewhat self-aware, and knowing what they are? Because I keep going back to the last week's episode when Herb was about to kind of spill the beans. He kept trying to say something to Vision along the lines of because we're, and then he just couldn't get it out. And Agnes looked like, if you say what you're about to say, we're going to be in trouble. So you know, it's an interesting dynamic, and it's odd that Wanda's motivations right now, because I mean Wanda's probably been through the ringer more than, I would say, more so than a lot of the like Marvel heroes. Everybody has their tragedies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but Wanda's, I would say, tipped the scale greatly. And from what I remember coming out of Endgame, Wanda kind of had this like peaceful resolve about her, after they defeated Thanos and the world went back to normal. She was obviously still sad from the loss of Vision, but she kind of just had this like accepting demeanor about her that, everything's over now, people's lives can get back to normal. And even though that I've lost someone important to me, my life will move on and continue. So it's weird to see that now suddenly she's like backslid into, this manic state almost, where she's kidnapped an entire town and essentially is playing house with her dead boyfriend. So
Yeah.
very, very interesting.
I don't know if it's. I feel like the easy answer is that she's doing this all because because of Vision, and I think that'll end up being the thing anyways. Is because I think after between Endgame and Infinity War and Endgame, after Vision dies, Wanda kind of had this motive of kill Thanos, defeat Thanos. Like that was the only thing she was thinking about was revenge. And when they finally get that and Thanos is done, I think at some point she realized how alone she was again. And once she did that, she probably snapped and just took this whole town hostage and made her own reality kind of thing. Because I mean, Wanda in Ultron, loses Quicksilver, and the only person she didn't feel alone because she had Quicksilver loses him, and then gains Vision, and then doesn't feel alone anymore, and then that's taken away from her. And then we saw how volatile her rage could be against Thanos because she felt alone, and now she's doing this. So I think that's going to be the motive, especially with her seeing dead Vision in this latest episode.
Yep.
But Yeah, that's my biggest question from these things is were the townspeople always aware that they had been kind of kidnapped into this reality, or is like her was she kind of getting absorbed in this reality she's making, this false reality, and then she kind of lets things slip, like letting people in and
Yeah.
other things, and then like now they're starting to like realize, and once again does she like harden down on her powers and start making them forget again, moving on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that definitely could make sense with how, you know, everything that was going on inside the house with Monica and Wanda, where they're talking about Pietro and Ultron. Like, when Wanda kind of gets stunned by the fact that she's from the outside world, that could have been kind of her grip on the world slipping, which could have been, that brief moment where Herb was trying to explain to Vision, like, hey, we're basically like being held at gunpoint here, and like this isn't real, none of this is real. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see. The town dynamic has always interested me in this show, because it's so, you know, back when we were thinking like, well, are these people even real or not? And now we know for sure that they are real and they are people with real lives. And now it's like, well, how exactly are they, like, what amount of influence? Like, I doubt Wanda went around the town and made them sign waivers before she started turning everything into TV land.
Yeah.
But, I want to know what level of control she actually has on everybody in the town, because it seems like it's varied, you know?
I think the
Yeah,
whole. No, go
go ahead,
ahead.
Josh.
I was just gonna
No.
say, like, I think the whole town aspect also shows you where she is mentally, because
Yeah.
the Wanda in Endgame would not take an entire town hostage, wipe the memory of the locals outside of the town, and
Right.
play, Utopia with your dead husband. That's not
Yeah.
the Wanda we saw in Endgame. So, like you guys are saying, like, she is definitely taking a turn for the worse, and something's happened to her. So.
Yeah.
I think another big question is what is Vision right now? Is she like reanimating him? Question mark. Like
Yeah.
is he because he seems to have his own mind outside of hers. Just because
Right.
like the whole conversation with Herb and then coming back inside and being like, "Hey, what's going?" Like him questioning what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, is it something that like she brought back Vision and like brought back this other reality of him or this other version of him, but then because of what Vision is being linked with an Infinity Stone or intertwined with one of the stones, and her powers coming from another stone,
Right.
it has she like manifested some kind of sentient new Vision out of this? Because I mean, we all know whenever it comes to the stones, things get wonky and things don't
Yeah.
Yeah.
go
Which
by rules
I
of nature.
I think their powers actually both come from the same stone,
No,
because
hers come from the stone that was in the Tesseract.
I thought
Because
hers was from the staff, because that's where they found the staff
oh yeah,
in
you're
Strucker's
Yeah.
right.
castle.
Yeah, you're right.
So
Yeah,
they found, yeah. So I think the stone, the staff, which I think is the mind gem.
Yes.
I think that was the one that was inside the staff, because that's what Loki was using to like mind control everybody. And
yeah,
that was the one that they found in Strucker's castle at the beginning of Age of Ultron, that they were using to create the enhanced, or whatever they like refer to Wanda and Pietro as. They
Yeah.
can't call them mutants. They can't now, but
Yeah.
day late and a dollar short on that. But that's, ultimately the same stone that ends up, they bust it out of the staff and sink it right into the middle of Vision's head. So so yeah, to your point, it's very interesting to see how Wanda's magic and like Vision's body kind of, how that affects things, because like you said, like the Infinity Stones make life wonky. They're kind of the ultimate like MacGuffin slash Deus Ex Machina. If you need to explain anything, you can use an Infinity Stone to do it. And I do wonder if that's Vision's actual body, because if everyone in the town is real, then one would have to imagine that Vision's body is also at least like real, in the sense that, it's not a construct of Wanda's mind. It's actually physical. So
I,
I wonder if that is like Vision's dead body, and maybe her seeing like him like dead was just the illusion dropping on the body, on the puppet, essentially, that she's walking around pretending is the actual Vision.
It's a
that's
bit
the
macabre for Marvel. I don't know.
yeah. That's kind of the what I was thinking. I thought that was actually Vision's body because that was
Yeah,
when Wanda was having to deal with reality with
right.
Maria, or not Maria, Monica, and that's when she turned around and saw Vision. And it was like, ooh, she had dropped her facade. You know, she was
Yeah,
having to deal with reality at that point. But yeah,
yep, definitely.
can we just take a second and appreciate like the show has some underlying horror elements to it a little bit. When you get
Yeah.
those moments, like all of a sudden you see a dead Vision with the Soul Stone ripped out of his head still and everything,
Mhm.
and just some of the way Wanda's acted in the past, just instantly rewinding time and stuff, just very subtle little kind of horror elements, and I appreciate that. It's very jarring when you get those moments in a happy, feel good sitcom that she's portraying,
Yeah.
and I like it. I like it.
Yeah, because you have this like you go from like in the first episode you go from, of course, my favorite moment, the plate crashing against Vision's head. You go from that to uh it was like the boss was like choking at dinner,
Yeah.
and the wife was just she just kept saying like, "Oh, stop it," and she kept laughing, and she'd say like, "Stop," and then she'd start laughing again. Like, it was really eerie and weird, and Wanda and Vision are just like looking at each other like, "What is going on?" And they just kept kind of amping it up more and more as the show kept going. So, and
Yeah.
the it's really cool. Another thing I kind of like is the explanation for a lot of the stuff that popped up. Like, I can't remember if we talked about this on the podcast or if we talked about it offline, but the fact that Wanda saw the sword medallion on
Yes.
it makes sense now that we know that when you enter into like the force field, you kind of get shaped to match the world.
Yep.
And uh Monica was wearing like a lanyard and like a laminated tag like that said sword on it. So it was like her ID badge or whatever. So when she got sucked up into the world, that ID badge suddenly became just like a necklace with the sword in it. So I thought that was really cool. That was something that stuck out
Yeah.
to me because I remember being like, if you're gonna try and infiltrate this place, why would you? I think maybe we did talk about it
Yeah,
because
we
I think
did. Yeah.
I made the James Bond comparison about like, you know, how can you be the world's greatest super spy if everyone knows you're the world's greatest super spy?
Yeah.
Like, you walking around telling everybody I'm James Bond, it's like, why are you telling them your name? Like, even if it's not his actual name, it's the one that he's known by. And he's still just walking around introducing himself to the bad guys like, "Hi, I'm James Bond." Like, she might as well just walk up and be like, "Hi, I'm Monica Rambeau, Agent of Sword." Like, I was fully convinced that Marvel had just dropped the ball. Like, they just needed something for Wanda to be like, "Oh, you're not from here." But they pulled the wool over my eyes. They
Yep.
tricked me. There was a reason for it. So, good on you, Marvel. You got me this time, but I will have my revenge.
And I know you
There were-
mentioned. No, sorry. Go
Yeah.
ahead. I was just gonna say, like you mentioned it before, but that also explains the drone. She's picked it up and it looked like a toy helicopter, but also had the sword logo, and then also the beekeeper who ended up being hazmat dude, and he, like you said, just fits the world. And even the cable that they had tied to him, as soon as it went through the force field, it became an old jump rope and
Yeah.
stuff too.
Yeah,
So
I thought
yeah.
that was pretty funny. I thought, the her boss or whatever like pulls the jump rope out and just like, what is going on? Like, oh, what a magical world Westview is.
Yeah.
You guys probably touched on it last week with it being, with the kids being born in, both Tommy and Billy,
And really,
Yeah.
yeah.
which we, from the comics, we know which is Thomas and William are their names, which
Yeah.
are
Like Wiccan and
Wiccan
Speed.
and yeah. And so it'll be interesting to see if they're actually real in this, but also going back again to her cracking down on her reality now that she has not only Vision in this reality that she wants to keep, but 2 kids with Vision in this reality
Ooh.
that she wants to keep. Does she just go like? Does she just go full mama bear from here on out, and like anybody that comes into this place is like I'm kind of afraid what's going to what's going to
Right.
happen. Instead of just getting warped in, they might just get vaporized. You know, it's hard telling with her powers.
Yeah, I mean, because in Age of Ultron, she was like, her whole thing, she was messing around with everybody's brains. She turned Hulk against everybody, and he almost leveled an entire city. So to think that the next person that tries to go in, she could essentially like melt their brains, is a definite terrifying thing. And like I'm glad that we have these conversations, because like when we talk this stuff through, more stuff starts popping into my head. Because like now I'm thinking, because last week I did mention, what if Wanda actually is pregnant, and what if like the circumstance in like Westview is because of that. So like my original speculation was maybe Sword was trying to maybe take her kids away from her, which caused her to do this. But now I'm wondering if, because we kind of talked about her trauma earlier, what if we like, I would assume that, trying to get my thoughts straight here, like Wanda got snapped away at the end of Infinity War, and then came back in Endgame, because that was her whole big moment where she popped back up and like told Thanos, like, you took everything from me. And I'm wondering if at that moment she was actually pregnant
Yeah.
with her twins. Because I'm thinking
Oh.
now, because we were talking about, here at the end of Endgame, here's a potentially like stable Wanda, and now something's happened that's caused her to like build this shelter around herself. So what
To
if that
protect that.
catalyst is the fact that she finds out she's actually pregnant with twins? Somehow it's Vision's kid. Who knows? Mind Stone. You know, anything's possible in comic book land. But she finds out that she's pregnant, and she's just like, she just has like a mental break, because she's a single mom now, and the world's a scary place, especially for people like her. She knows that better than anybody. And suddenly she finds herself trying to, I mean, in a small town in New Jersey, she completely builds a shelter around herself where she has the perfect life, the perfect husband, and 2 healthy baby boys.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to think now that those boys are real, and that she did actually give birth in Westview. And because if everybody else is real, and we think Vision's body is at least real, then why wouldn't those babies be real?
Right.
So now it's starting to seem like to me that everything Wanda's doing is to protect those babies. But I'm just wondering if there is a greater like catalyst to this, other than her just kind of like having the moment in her head where she's like, I'm by myself with 2 kids. Like, I want to say that there's a greater evil out there somewhere that's threatening her, which is causing her to kind of regress into like this sheltered state that she's in right now. So I'm really interested to see how, because I don't think Sword, well, probably too early to tell, because I feel like when you set up a new character in a position of power, like the director of Sword, you have to immediately wonder when he's going to betray the main
Yeah.
characters. Because come on, it happens all the time,
Yeah.
So so for right now, Sword feels like they're part of the good guys, but I'm just kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop now, and for the director to be like, we tried to take her children because they're superpowered and we can use them to defend the earth, but we're doing it nefariously.
Well, they might not even be taking it to use them. That's probably their next step is, okay, we can't really go in and stop Wanda. We've got to get
Mhm.
her out of there. And the only reason she's going to leave, because they think Vision is dead,
Yeah.
is get those kids. And they know
Oh
by
man.
Geraldine coming out that things made inside there can survive outside there. based on her. She came out looking like everything she was wearing inside there.
Yeah.
So at least they have a theory running that things can come out and be okay. So they're probably gonna go after the kids next.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting in the next episode to see how like Geraldine or Monica. Gosh, she has.
Yeah,
I hate that
it's
she has
weird.
two
It's like,
names.
which one?
I hate that she has two names, and I hate that her name is so close to her mom's name. Because I feel like we're gonna go back and look at this, and we're gonna be like, "Ah, man, we mixed the names up. Like she's actually Maria, and the mom's actually Monica." Like I've been questioning myself every time I say Monica. Like, is that really her name? But yeah, in the next episode, if Monica comes to, because she was kind of like almost in a comatose state after getting chucked out of the town. So it's gonna be interesting to see like what she remembers and kind of where she's like where her headspace is at in the next episode. At least I hope that's what gets revealed in the next episode.
Yeah.
Talk about ideas just spinning off and jumping off other ideas. I'm really trying to rack my brain. Have we seen children inside this town?
No. Which
So
is
that's
interesting.
It's going to be interesting
Yeah,
because if these kids start to like grow up, and I don't know if they're going to grow up at like an advanced rate being inside of this or whatever. If these kids start to grow up, is she going to just manifest other children? Because it'll be kind of weird for these kids to just be running around by themselves. I mean, it's not to say that there are kids in this town, we just haven't seen them because it's not impossible. But you would think at like the magic show or at the talent show and stuff like that, we would have seen kids around. But it's just been all adults until Tommy and Billy.
Because that was the whole point of that magic show, it was like for the children, which kind of furthers this idea that Wanda's created this world specifically for her kids to grow up in and like to be safe and live like a good life, like the life that she never had. So yeah, it's very interesting.
We're onto something here.
If we get pulled off of YouTube, you know that we were right. So like, share, subscribe. Send us around as quickly as you can before the man takes us away. Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, it's gonna be interesting because if those kids do, because I think they will age in an accelerated rate because Wanda's pregnancy kind of did that. So I wouldn't be surprised if with each episode these kids are like 2 or 3 years older than they were in the previous episode. So I think I'm gonna like call a shot right now and just assume that one of the things that's gonna kind of further break down this world and kind of cause Wanda to go into a bit of a panic is that I bet one of those twins is going to ask her, like, "Mom, why are there no other kids in the town? Why is Billy the only other kid? Why is Tommy the only other kid?" And then Wanda's gonna like go into panic mode and she's gonna have to try and like talk her way out of it or magic her way out of it, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of a major linchpin in Westview's facade kind of getting tore down and Wanda's like true motives being revealed to the viewers.
Not to dive too far into it, but doesn't Wiccan have like Mind Stone, kind of the same powers that Wanda has?
I think so.
So depending on whenever he develops those powers could also lead to like a breakdown of reality inside there because he could start doing stuff willy-nilly as he wants and then he gets out of control and then they're butting heads on what should be reality kind of thing. So that probably won't happen, but who knows.
I mean, we've still got quite a few episodes left. I mean, they definitely could age them up and get to those pretty quickly.
I mean, we've got like 5 more episodes, I think. This was episode 4. I think there's 9 episodes in total for this season. I assume this is a limited series, right? Like this, are they just doing? I would assume that they're just going to do one season of WandaVision.
Yeah, I haven't heard any talk of a second season. It's possible still, but...
who knows? It's hard to say, but, whatever makes money.
Right.
But yeah, and kind of in the same vein as like if Wiccan kind of starts developing his powers and starts asking like, why is like clearly reality's being messed with here? What are you doing, Mom? I wouldn't be surprised if because Speed has Pietro's powers essentially. He's a speedster as well. So that I could see that messing with Wanda, maybe kind of driving her a little cuckoo, or being super protective of Speed because of
Hmm.
what happened to Pietro, and if one son is telling her like this world's not real, you're screwing with something, and she's trying to like protect the other son because she fears the same fate that her brother had, like falling onto him. Like Wanda could just absolutely, go off the deep end at some point near the end of this show, which could result in, these kids kind of like teaming up against their mom. I would hate for Wanda to be the bad guy, like the ultimate bad guy of the show, because it kind of feels like that's how she's positioned right now. Especially after this episode, like we all kind of suspected, like she's the one who's messing with reality, like every time something's not going her way. But now that it's kind of been brought to the forefront, it's like, no, yeah, she's definitely messing with everybody. I want to believe that there's something else that's doing this to her, because Wanda, I keep kind of going back to it, but like Wanda's like whole life has just been full of so much tragedy that it would just feel bad for this to be like the next step in her life, is that she's like
Yeah.
falling into madness, and is gonna have to be, like held under lock and key or something, so I really hope that there's a big bad out there hiding in the shadows that's kind of like forcing her hand to do things this way.
I think that's wishful thinking. I really
Oh
do
yeah.
think she could be the catalyst for blowing open the multiverse. This
Mm,
could be setting up directly, well, we know it leads into it in some way, but this
yeah.
could be heavily setting up uh, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And going from a story perspective, it would make sense that when you have one of the biggest bads in the Marvel comic universe with Thanos, you got to take it more personal after that. You can't bring
Right.
in just the next big bad, and making Wanda the center of a lot of this phase.
So are you thinking that she's gonna be the the big bad of the next phase, or she's just gonna
I think
be
she could
contributing?
create the situation. I think she could blow open the
Okay.
universe or the multiverse, and then there you go. You got Doctor Strange, and I don't know if it would end with Doctor Strange. So they'd probably wrap it up with Doctor Strange, but I think she could be a big focus of this phase.
I don't know. I kind of feel like Doctor Strange. Like I feel like that movie. I mean, do we know what the timeline for the Doctor Strange movie is? Does it come out relatively early in the next phase of MCU movies?
Keep talking. I'll look that up. I can't
Because
remember the order.
because I know we've talked about it before about how, how do you trump uh, a villain like Thanos that you've been building for like 10 or so years, and the obvious choice is to kind of like open the world up beyond what you had before, and the multiverse definitely is a way to do that. So it feels like it would make sense for not only that to be, one of the first movies to come out, but also for Doctor Strange to kind of be like the Tony Stark of this like new era in Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because like Tony was kind of like the through line through everything to like some
Yes.
extent, or one could argue that like just the Starks generally speaking, because they, the Starks had a presence in almost every, every era of this thing happening, and causing major events. Howard being involved with Captain America's creation, Tony essentially creating every villain that they ever had to fight with his poor life choices early on in his career. you know Tony was always a presence in the whole like MCU. Like you kind of felt like his presence was felt in the majority of it. I'm not gonna say all of it, because the Thor movies, not so
Yeah.
much. Later ones a little bit, like Ragnarok, but you know they kind of need that character, I think, that like anchor point for the series. And Iron Man was that for like the past 10 years. So maybe Doctor Strange will be that for the next 10 years, or however long. I mean, they'll probably do these movies until the inevitable heat death of the universe,
Yeah.
but at least for the next 10 years, Benedict Cumberbatch is gonna steer this ship.
So, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness comes out March 25th, 2022. So next March, a year from
Okay.
this March. So
Okay, so
it's possible. Maybe that's a little
Yeah.
far out there. I might be on board with my theory more if it was coming out this year, but I don't know. It's interesting. I was spitballing
Yeah,
there,
true.
but we'll
Well,
see.
well, then again, we also got to remember, the pandemic has also delayed things. I don't know if that
That's
was its
true.
initial release date, but or if they had it initially releasing closer to whenever
Yeah,
WandaVision did. So
that's
I
true
think I
too.
think you can still be on the. I think it's really going to lead into the multiverse thing. I don't know if
Mhm.
she's going to create it, but I think there's going to be a connection between the two. I don't see
Yeah.
the series connecting with much anything else that they have slated
Mm.
besides like Geraldine. Geraldine, I'm
Monica.
just gonna call her Geraldine. Uh, Besides her, like possibly spinning off into the Miss Marvel or the next Captain Marvel um, movies, but
Yeah.
other than that, I think the only real connection that this is going to have to the universe is the multiverse of madness, and two, maybe a Young Avengers down the road. Kind
Mm.
of.
I think we talked about that last week too. We would love to see
So
a
yeah,
Young Avengers, and if this lays the groundwork for it, then more power to them. Keep it coming.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Well, fellas, if there's anything that you would like to cover that we haven't already, speak now or forever hold your peace.
I think I'm good.
yeah, good.
All right. Well, overall, I thought that this was a really good episode. I think it was a much needed break from the sitcom stuff, as enjoyable as it was. We kind of they needed to fill in some gaps, and I think they did that pretty well. And I'm really excited to see next week's episode. I hope there is more Jimmy Woo and more sleight of hand magic. If Jimmy saves like this shit, like if whoever is the big bad, if Jimmy defeats them with sleight of hand magic, then this might go down as the greatest thing Marvel's ever created. Period for me.
Agreed.
So, all right, everybody. Well, thanks for hanging in there with us. If you liked this, do the thing, like the video, share it, subscribe, much appreciated. And until next time, we'll see you. Bye.
Catch you later.
Good one.